Most of you have never heard of J.P. Dixon, and I guess a very good chunk of you have never read the Pan Book of Horror 29, since the series was cancelled at volume 30. And that's a shame because you have missed out on one of the best horror stories I've ever read, The Surgeon's Tale. Consider myself lucky to have read it because it was translated in a Greek edition. It was part of, it was a standalone novella and then published in this anthology that is sort of a celebration of a more boutique, transgressive slash horror publishing house here in Greece in the since the 90s. So I was lucky enough to read it, and oh boy, that's real horror. That's what I consider horror. Oftentimes we talk about horror like, oh, there are monsters and they do stuff, or there are ghosts, there are ghouls. This can be horror, but this story really, really touches upon what horror is at a fundamental level, and it's a shame that it has not been read widely. I remember being on Reddit a couple of months ago when somebody was asking for great horror stories, and me, in my ignorance, yes, because this story is kind of notorious over here, I said, oh, read this one, and nobody has heard it. So I did a Google search and found out it was published in a very obscure tome of, well, a famed horror anthology that was at that point past its prime. So yeah, the title is probably right. That's the best horror story you've never read. And if someone watching this video actually knows the author or the estate of the author, get this story out on Kindle Unlimited. It's going to do a killing. It's horrific. So what's the deal with the story? And yes, this will be a spoiler review of the story because, alright, you can read it, but what can I do? Also, content warning is going to be extreme. I'll try to gloss over some of the more bodily details of what's happening in the story because it's a body horror story, not a splatterpunk, a body horror story. So we're back in the Victorian age and we're in a club, and one of the patrons there interrupts the others and tells his horrific story. He used to be a surgeon, a young surgeon in London, and one night he went into a pub, and this pub was next to a theatre where the artists went out after their performance was over, and there he sees this very beautiful young woman, Paulette, who really piques his interest, but then he notices that she's missing her left arm from the forearm, from the elbow down, and also she's missing her right hand, which is bandaged and still bleeding. So after quite some time he returns to that pub because he's haunted by that woman. He's fascinated by her, and he notices that she's also missing a leg. And he's like, what's the deal? Why is this woman getting amputated? I know a lot of you start to realize what the story is about. So he goes, he introduces himself, and she tells him that she performs in a theater and he should come and see her. And yes, he goes to the theater after quite some time because he's very busy at the hospital and he cannot go there at the date she told him. And he sees a very mediocre show, and then the second act starts where Paulette appears, and she's basically taken on stage and she's being amputated as part of a spectacle, and she's doing that every 2-3 months, whatever. She's losing parts of her limbs. At some point she has her entire leg amputated, and she summons the doctor in her dressing room, and she says that yes, is in love with him too, and asks him for help to help her continue her stunt, even though she's lost her limbs, so it's almost impossible to. And Paulette is a special case because she was born with any condition where she couldn't feel any pain, so she started off as as a Grand Guinol performer when she put needles through her, and then at some point she cut a finger, and everybody was ecstatic by that, and that became her number, and she got a lot of money because she was an orphan. She has a daughter with a man she was not married with, etc. It's sort of, it's Victorian London, so everybody's in poverty, and cutting her body is a great way to make money. Yeah, that's commentary for you. Our protagonist is both horrified by that, but also he's madly in love with this woman. So they start to go out, they start to make plans what he can do, and he puts his surgery skills into use to continue those operations, to try and remove as many parts of Paulette as he can, because he rationalizes that, she is obsessed with the idea of reducing her body, of cutting out the parts that that doesn't need, and if I don't do it, somebody else may do it, and he may not be as skilled as I am, so she will die. And what continues in the story is a lot of operations that are truly horrifying. They're not discussed in details, it's very clinical from that point on, but the way you see the body of a person being gradually reduced is a horror you've never read before. And it's really sick, it's a really unique story, it hits you because this story is about losing yourself, you're being a human. You definitely, most of us who are able-bodied have a fear of losing parts of our body. Once upon a time I had my forearm broken, and for a couple of months I was not able to work my right hand properly, and that was very annoying. So yeah, boohoo. Right. So I can grasp what it feels like to missing a body part, what adjustments you have to make, and how it will feel. And the idea of somebody going out and trying to achieve that to an extreme form where their body stops looking like a human body is just horrifying, and that's where that story hit me. So yes, I would love to see the story republished in an approachable way. If you ever come across a copy of the Great Pan Book of Horror, Volume 29, grab it, because you'll read the story and it's amazing. It's the greatest story you've never read unless you're Greek. But what can I say? You can also learn Greek and read it, but yeah, I'm not sure it's that easy. However, this was my review for J.P. Dixon's The Surgeon's Tale, a horror story that is deeply horrifying. I hope you now feel the urge to find the book to read this story too. If you cannot, don't blame me, I told you, you've never read it. And you can like, subscribe for more short story reviews like that, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching and stay spooky.